Yes, we can. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the contract strategy. You've already heard quite a bit about it today from Mr. Miller, and then William Podgy also went into it. I'm going to go into it a little more in depth and hopefully clear up some other things that might be on your mind about it. Still collecting questions, so if the contract specialist could disperse throughout the room, that would probably help me rather than me trying to point out folks as I'm trying to get through these slides. So I don't know. Can I control these slides or? No. The one tech guy grabs the thing and says, let me try it. Yeah, okay. All right. If I can go to the next slide or someone can do that. Okay. So why are we doing this is basically the first slide. What are we thinking about with this strategy? What we've been doing is a legacy bottom-up strategy, and that's really been unsustainable for us. The trend data indicates we're going to have 400 to 500 IDIQ contracts by FY13, and we just don't have the personnel to be able to do those contracts, whether it be in 2.0 and contracting or even in our technical competencies. Trying to monitor that amount of work through contracts is just really not possible. So it's also confusing to you. You know, we think that coming at you from all these different angles with all these smaller contracts or niche contracts or contracts associated with a certain program or project, but they all kind of look alike. It's harder for you to figure out where you fit into our business model. So this business model should be better for you as well. Of course, it's inefficient to have that many contracts and to try to manage all those. And then it also impacts our ability to meet our current and future requirements. A lot of times we talk about MRAP and the success that we had there. We had contract capacity in that case to be able to support MRAP work when it came in. That was what we like to call fortuitous. Hopefully this will allow us to put contracts in place that will allow us to have that ceiling whenever we need it. And of course, we're doing this in a broad spectrum as we've been talking about, so we should be able to fit our work under these contracts. The previous strategy was designed around to serve an organizational model that doesn't exist anymore. We've been talking about CAO, competency-aligned organization, a little bit today. So as we went to competency-aligned organization with the competencies and then the business portfolios, we realized that our structure and our strategy really wasn't set up for that. So this will align us with the corporate structure that we now have. A lot of advantages to multiple award contracts. We've embraced those. We've done a lot of them already, and we're going to do more of them. They fit right into this strategy, so we do more and more multiple award contracts. And, of course, you all are familiar with all the acquisition policy, just as we are, that continually comes out. A lot of things about efficiency and strategic sourcing and saving money and all those good things. So we think that this strategy really puts us in a position to do that. The next slide. So we're building capability-focused contracts to target the mission capabilities delivered by the portfolios. That's what we've been talking about all day today. That's why we had those portfolio managers up here to talk to you about their portfolios. Now we're going to put those contracts in place to support them. There's 6 portfolios, as you just heard from all of them. We're going to put 4 contracts per portfolio in place. So most of you probably know this, but just in case it's not clear, we're going to have 6 unrestricted contracts. Those are valued at around $900 million. We're going to have 6 small business set-asides. Those are valued around $250 million. We're going to have 6 8A set-asides. Those are valued around $99 million. And then 6 other preference programs. Those are valued around $99 million as well. Okay? 24 total contracts are going to, and those are multiple award contracts. 24 max are going to be put out to support these portfolios. That's going to create the optimal competition environment for us. There's a large number of opportunities for large and small business. So out of the 24 contracts, 18 of them are going to be set aside in some capacity. 18 out of the 24. 33% of the contract capacity represented by these RFPs is also set aside. So a lot of opportunity for small business, and then 6 $900 million contracts unrestricted. Of course, there's teaming arrangements that can be made throughout the 24 as well. So a lot of opportunities for all of you. I'm assuming that's why you're here today. This will give us the ability also to target the industry leaders in the portfolios. So as Jim was kind of alluding to earlier today, when he was talking about you don't necessarily have to propose on all the different RFPs, we're looking for you to figure out where you best fit into this strategy and target your efforts on those. And then that's going to give us great competition at the task order level for those portfolios. We're looking for 2 to 5 awardees per contract. We think that's manageable. Obviously, these are going to be multiple award contracts, so we got to have at least 2. we're thinking 5 is about the high end for us to be able to implement this strategy. So in the multiple award IDIQs, you're going to see that we're going to have different CLIN structures. We're going to have cost plus fixed fee, fixed price incentive, and then firm fixed price CLINs. 1 base year with 4 option years, and then provisions to add contractors in order to enhance competition. And I'm going to talk about that more specifically on some other slides. And of course, we're going to do these as best value and do trade-off source selection procedures on them. Next slide. Okay, so again, kind of reiterating, each contract will deliver and sustain the capabilities and solutions for each of our portfolios, all 6 of them. The contract scope, the PWSs, they're going to look essentially the same, okay, for each contract. They're going to have each segment of the acquisition lifecycle in them, and they're going to support all of the competencies at Spaywar Atlantic. So all the work that we do to support our mission. The contract value is based on our demand signal, and that's derived from our business plans. It does not cover all of it, however, okay? So we say it was derived from the plans. It's probably around 60% of the obligation rate that we have at Spaywar Atlantic right now. Part of this is kind of considered almost like a pilot program, if you will. We think this is the right structure. We'll test it in this environment, and in the future, who knows, we may have even larger contracts come out. But we are basing it on our demand signal. We can receive funding various ways and various types of funding. Again, these are supposed to be wide open contracts for us to be able to fit the work that we do and also support the customers that we support with whatever funding they have. The risk is going to be minimized at the task order level by using firm fixed price orders for well-defined work. We're obviously being pushed to more and more firm fixed price through some of those policies I mentioned before, and we want to do that. So whenever we can define the work very well, we're going to do firm fixed price orders. Next slide. OCI is a fun issue, and of course, pretty big issue when you're doing this kind of contracting with 24 total contracts out there. A lot of existing contracts out there. Kathy Breitreitz will talk about that in more detail in a few minutes. Software, we kind of already talked about that as well, but of course we're going to conform with all the different policies that we have to conform with there. And then the overall strategy, we've talked quite a bit about this today too. So I think it's been covered pretty well, but just to summarize it again, we will have command-wide niche contracts. The tactical vehicle integration contracts, air traffic control, internet cafe operations, we will still have those contracts. Those are going to be put in place for specific programs or specific customers that don't, logically roll into a pillar contract. So we will still have several of those. We'll also have other Spaywar-wide contracts that we'll use. I think William mentioned earlier this morning the global install contract. We will use that. If there's other enterprise-wide contracts that we can order from, we'll do that as well. We're going to use Seaport E, probably focus more in the knowledge-based services arena, which is not really what these contracts are set up for. There's a lot of good things like Jim alluded to earlier this morning about Seaport. There are some inflexibilities, if you will, as well with Seaport. So multiple lines of accounting, follow-on orders, those kind of things don't really lend themselves to Seaport. So there are times where we won't be able to use Seaport. And then other DoD and federal contracts, the ITES, Encore, NetSense. I think William's slide had all those on there and maybe even a couple others. So whatever contracts that are out there, big GWACs or DoD-wide, whatever they may be, if we can order from them and they're advantageous to us, we'll still use those as well. Because again, these pillars will not support 100% of our obligations. So on-ramps and off-ramps. I mentioned a little bit earlier, we'll have on-ramps. What we do here, and this is pretty much mandated from the Ashton Carter memos, if we don't get competition, 85% of the time we go out for task orders, then we're going to institute on-ramp procedures at around the 18 to 24 month mark of a contract. So what that means is if we're not getting good competition, we basically open it up, see if there's any other members of industry who want to try to get on that contract, have a source selection process, and if we can add somebody to that contract, we will. And hopefully that will enhance our competition. If we're getting good competition all along, then we don't have to do that. The off-ramp procedures, basically, if we're getting a MAC holder who is consistently not performing well, or perhaps they're not bidding, proposing, they're basically a non-player or a poor player, then we may not exercise options. That's definitely not going to be an automatic that we're just going to keep you on the contract. We're looking to enhance our competition as we perform. Next slide. So after we award, we're going to have some different kinds of administration. As probably some of you know, we're going through some changes with our core process. Basically, there won't be a core at the basic contract level. These are IDIQs. The work is done at task order level, so there's no real need to have a core at that IDIQ level. So we're making that change. The technical cores will be at the task order level. They'll be trained and certified, and they'll be able to monitor work, do the invoices, accept, inspect, those kind of things. The actual PWSs, so going back to the second bullet, that's going to be a well-defined PWS. So we don't want these to turn into mini IDIQs, and that's happened some in the past where all of a sudden we're almost issuing like TDLs, technical direction letters, or some other form of direction on an actual order, and that really shouldn't be the case. The order should be clear on their face. You should know what you need to do based on performance work statement, and you go do that. You're not getting that constant direction from us. We'll have a quality assurance surveillance plan on every order, a QASP we call that, and we'll do CPARS evaluations for every order over $1 million. That's important to me, especially as I'm doing other pre-awards. I want to be able to use good CPARS data, and we'll be getting that from these orders that you're doing over $1 million on our contracts. So that's good. Next slide. Okay, so if you're following along now, you're probably thinking, how the heck are they going to do this with 24 contracts and figure out what contract to use? We do have a process that we're putting in place right now. We're developing a ConOps, and it's kind of simplistic, really, to be honest. If you think about it, what we're going to do is, based on who's originating the work, if the first look we're going to give it is, if it's for the TCI portfolio, we're going to look and say, are we using a TCI contract that was put in place to support that portfolio? It won't always have to be that way, as you've heard several times today, but that'll be a first check that we'll make. Then we'll look at capacity, complexity, and prior experience to figure out which of those contracts should be used. So, again, pretty simplistic when you think about it. If the work's been done by an 8A in the past, why would we not use the 8A pillar in that case for that particular portfolio? So that's kind of the check that we're going to make. 8As, the 8A set aside and the preference program set aside and even the small business set aside, if that's where the work's been done in the past, that would be our first check to make sure we're staying in those programs. We typically do not take things out of those programs, even in our current structure. We will consider the availability of manpower, the required skill sets, different subcontractors, the current ceiling remaining. So we'll make some other business decisions based on where we are in a contract or what's going on with the requirements. The last bullet on here talks a little bit about an IPT with the small business office. We're kind of still evolving in this area. It's really starting to look a lot more like a governance board, if you will. So we're going to have a good review process in place that will include small business, include the technical team, and include contracts to make sure we're putting the work on the right contract. So as task orders come in, we'll probably have a structure in place that'll have a governance board look at certain orders, maybe over a certain dollar threshold, and make sure that the decision on which pillar to use is the right decision. So we're going to have a pretty robust process in place. Next slide. How we're going to do that in terms of monitoring it, we're going to need reports, obviously, to know where we are against ceiling. So we're definitely going to be using quarterly reports. We have the ability to get this kind of data now so that we'll know where we are against contract ceiling. And we'll be looking at that probably more monthly, but we'll have a quarterly reporting system that we'll use. Ordering officers are going to be very involved in this. They're going to be looking at the scope and make sure they're in the right pillars. They're going to be looking at, is it coming from an originating portfolio / competency and going to that right contract? So they'll be asking that question. If it's not going to the originating portfolio, then basically why not? So we'll be tracking that down. They'll be looking at ceiling, like I just mentioned, and also to make sure set-asides make sense to them. Again, our ordering officers know the work very well as they're putting these task orders in place. So that's going to be another check for us. They'll also be making the determination on contract type at the order level. Like I mentioned, our preference is to use firm fixed price orders whenever practicable. So if we can define the work, we're going firm fixed price. If the requirements lend themselves to an incentive type situation, in other words, there's some objectives that we can put in place that feel like that we feel like that will incentivize you to perform in a certain way, then we'll use our FPI CLIN. And if there are risks or uncertainties associated with the work that we just can't avoid, then we have the CPFF CLIN. So those decisions will be made at the order level. Next slide. Okay, so basis for award at the task order level, how we're going to implement those. In most cases, we're going to use best value. Whenever we buy services, that's typically the way we like to do that. We don't like to do a lot of low-cost, technically acceptable stuff. We will have the ability to do that, but primarily we'll be making best value decisions at the task order level as well. That determination will be made, how we're going to solicit will be made before we send it out to you, so it'll be clear in those RFPs. And the standard response time is going to be set at 30 days. So we're looking to give you 30 days to propose. There's a reason for that. The fourth sub-bullet on this slide talks about when we don't get good competition. If we go out for less than 30 days and we don't have a waiver in place and we only get one proposal, we have to put that solicitation back out for 30 days and try to get competition. If we still don't get competition, then we have to negotiate, and we will require certified cost of pricing data from that one offer that we're getting. Basically, again, policies that are mandating us to do these things. So we have to be very careful how we go out and how much time we do give you to submit your proposals. The performance monitoring, I've been over that. Again, cores at the task order level, QASPs, and we'll do CPARs over $1 million. Next slide. Okay. Dates. This slide gets a little confusing. The next slide will clear it up a little bit. But as I put this slide together, it was really made to represent the largest RFPs that I was working on. When we combine the information, it gets a little confusing because now it's trying to capture all 24 in the major milestone process. So the first three bullets, you'll see the third bullet has an asterisk that says that applies only to unrestricted and the small business set aside. Really, it's the first three bullets that applies to. Okay, so the six $250 million RFPs and the six $900 million RFPs have all gone through headquarters. The acquisition plans have all gone through headquarters and have been forwarded on to ASN. Okay, so those are the things that we accomplished on 17 June. Those 12 are now being reviewed by ASN. So those acquisition plans are in review. We got some back and forth going. We're making good progress. We're hoping for approval very quickly. The pre-solicitation synopsis draft RFP, we put out some draft PWSs, and we've announced these, kind of set up our own little area for each RFP in e-commerce. We did that. We're having industry day today. As you can see, I missed my date by one. Sorry about that. So then the next slide, or the next bullet, the peer review at ASN. That only applies to the six $900 million contracts, so the unrestricted RFPs. Okay, and what that is for anything over a certain dollar threshold, which those are, I have to go up with my RFP, get peer reviewed before an award decision, and there's also another one in there if we have discussions. So that's not on this slide. But there are certain parts of the acquisition stage, or process, where I have to go up to ASN and get a peer review. So as soon as I get AP approval on the 900s, I need to try to get those six RFPs done and get them sent up for peer review. You can see how some of this is going to affect when we're releasing RFPs. So the next one, issue RFPs. Very important that I state that's FY11, not calendar year 11. Okay, so we're going to try to issue these RFPs in the fourth quarter of FY11, which we are in right now. I just have to remind myself of that. We're going to close most of them in the fourth quarter. And again, my next slide will clean this up, and this is where it gets a little fuzzy. But we're going to close most of them. If we can get them, which obviously means if we can get those issued in the next month, we'll be able to close those in September. Pre-negotiation clearance you don't really care about. The unrestricteds, I have to go back to that peer review. So if we can award without discussions, then award on initials for pretty much all of these in different parts of that second quarter FY12. So that's the goal. Very, very aggressive milestones. Obviously, if we do go into discussions, that changes the milestone plan that you're seeing here. But we wanted to share as much as we could to try to at least let you know how important it is to us to get these done. We're really pushing hard. I'll say it again and again. The specialists have done an amazing job teaming up and getting these to where they are right now. So, William and myself and everyone involved are really optimistic that we can come close to these dates. So the next slide is probably more interesting to you. All right, preference program max, all 6 of them. The APs are at headquarters, acquisition plans. When they're approved, we have no further approvals to go through. We can start to issue RFPs. The goal is to issue all 6 of those RFPs same day, sometime in August 2011. The 8A max, all 6 of those RFPs, same deal. Acquisition plans are at headquarters. When we get the approvals, we're going to turn around and release RFPs as quickly as possible in August of 2011. That should be right around the same time for those 12. The preference programs and the 8A max will basically be on the same exact schedule. William's talked about it several times in different forums. I know most of you have probably heard it about the efficiencies that we believe you'll gain in writing your proposals, kind of the same proposals for these efforts. The costing of them and things like that should help you to be able to figure out which one of these you can do simultaneously. So the small business set-aside MAC, all 6 of those, they require ASN AP approval. We hope to get that really soon too. However, we do want to stagger that one a little bit. So our goal is to give you about 2 weeks between the first 12 and those 6. So that's why you'll see a September 2011 release date on the small business set-aside. Again, there we think you're going to gain some efficiencies. You'll be able to implement some lessons learned and be able to be ready to propose on the small business set-aside, whether it be priming or subbing. And then the unrestricteds. They're kind of the wild card in the bunch. They got to go through, I got to get acquisition plan approval, and then I have the peer review that I have to finish. So as soon as I get AP approval, I need to try to get all that documentation up there to start the peer review and hopefully get through that as quickly as possible. We have some history with that, so we think we know what we're in for. And we would definitely have some natural staggering, we think, between that one and the small business set-aside. We're hoping for about a week in between those. Again, a little bit out of my control on that one, but it's a goal. So that's the schedule. We would release the first 12 same time in August, a little bit of staggering with the small business set-aside, and then a little bit more with the unrestricted. So the note there at the bottom, and we'll talk about this at the end of the program as well, really need you to go out to e-commerce and follow that. I know most of you have been doing that already, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So all of our information goes out there. There's a link there. And we'll also talk at the end of the program about where some of this stuff will be posted as well, so you'll know where to go for all that. So again, submit questions as you have them, and I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Breitreitz now, and she'll go over the RFPs in more detail. Thank you.